Nepal has denied reports that India's relief and rescue contingent in particular has been singled out for de-induction. Nepal is saying that the second phase of rescue and relief operations is now entered and all foreign countries are being asked to withdraw their rescue teams. But this decision coming a day after the top Twitter trend was from Nepal, go back home Indian media has raised a significant question. Has Operation Maitri turned unfriendly? And what role has the Indian media played in that, if any? Also, have geostrategic fault lines now creating their own tremors? Let's introduce our panel this evening. Joining us from Kathmandu is, of course, my colleague Vishnu Shom. With him is well-known columnist and author Sujeev Shakya. With me in the studio is senior journalist Nalini Singh, who also runs a channel, a television channel in Nepal, Nepal One. We're also joined by Shiv Mukherjee, former Indian ambassador to Nepal, General Hasnain, who's of course been a former general officer commanding of the 15th Corps, and we're also joined from Mumbai by well-known author and commentator Shobha De. And let me start with you, Ambassador Mukherjee, if I may. How do you see this decision, before we get an on-ground reaction, to de-induct, to take back India's rescue teams, coming a day after this big Twitter trend which says go back home Indian media? People are going to say this more than meets the eye despite Nepal's denials.
Well, you can't blame Nepal for what people perceive based on, you know, all this doing and throwing on Twitter. The fact is, it's perfectly legitimate for the Nepali government to say that the search and rescue phase is over. It's now more than 8 days since the earthquake struck. There is no hope at all anymore of any survivors. So the teams, the 34 teams that were sent in from various countries, the search and rescue teams, have done their job.
You're saying this is a natural process of the relief and rescue operation?
It is a natural process. It is now the work that is going to be done is going to be relief, rehabilitation, recovery and so on.
You don't think...
And I can speak from a little bit of knowledge here because I've checked with Nepal and our embassy and so on. For instance, they've immediately asked India for an engineering team because now the immediate task is to clear away the debris and the rubble.
Yeah.
So at that time, for the search and rescue teams to hang around is not really necessary, neither is it desirable.
So this is no hostility creeping into Op Maitri?
Absolutely not. I mean, every Nepali leader, even those who in their election rallies, you know, put in a bit of anti-Indian rhetoric for a few votes, none of them, I mean, all of them realize the kind of help, the outstanding help that India has provided.
Let me get a view from Kathmandu. Sujeev, how do we see this? We've seen a cartoon that has gone viral online which shows the Indian media focusing on the Indian military. And that's the story for them. Now, of course, we're very proud of our military, but it seems to have ruffled a few feathers. It seems to be perhaps seen as a kind of cultural imperialism. What's going on here? Why do you not explain to us what's going on here? Is this Twitter trend connected with the de-induction decision that has taken place today at all?
I think the issue here is the Twitter trend is not only directed against, you know, sort of the rescue, but I think it's more to do with the on the, you know, sort of job reporting that has happened. There was a lot of, you know, sort of reportage we saw where, you know, sort of microphones were pushed into, you know, to mothers who had just lost their children.
Yes.
So there has been, I think it's more to do with that. And of course, there were visuals of security forces in rescue. I think that's quite natural. But I would say it's more to do with how the reportage was handled on the ground rather than linking it with the rescue operations of what India is doing as a friendly neighbor.
Okay, Shobha De, let me bring you in on this. As a journalist, what do you feel about how, you know, I believe that like in anything, there is good reporting and there is loud reporting. And, you know, my colleagues, Vishnu, sitting there among them, have been understated and dignified and controlled and calibrated in their reporting. Yet we see when the broad stroke comes, when the Twitter trend comes, it applies to everybody. I mean, isn't that a bit unfair?
Yes, I think it is unfair.
One second, I'm just getting
it is a bit unfair, but when you look at the overall picture, when you look at the way that...
No, also what we are looking at...
When you look at how the overall reportage has been, it's been hugely insensitive. Hugely insensitive. And Vishnu was, yes, definitely one of the more dignified people at Ground Zero and did a fantastic job. And it's not about an individual. It's the overall lack of, I'd say, lack of training, lack of expertise at covering calamities. A lot of young journalists are thrown into this. They get overexcited. They don't know where to draw the line. They're intrusive. They're, almost rude and crude in their approach to beat other people to get the kind of human interest story. It's not a human interest story when you thrust a mic into the face of a woman who's, inconsolable at the loss of a child and ask her, how do you feel at this moment?
Yeah.
So we need to train our staff better. We need to sensitize our people better. I don't think this has anything to do with the rescue mission being called off at all. I think the outrage has been primarily against journalists who simply did not know where to draw the line, where to back off, and where to show some respect towards the dead and the grieving.
Let me bring in General Hasnain. General Hasnain, is what's happening a debate about the media, or is it a debate about unseen, invisible yet present sort of competitive geopolitics at play? There is the lurking reporting that China and Pakistan are objecting to Indian military presence on the ground. There is the Nepalese sentiment that the focus has become almost entirely on the Indian military, as if Nepal were an extension of India. Now, their military linkages are old and ancient. We've spoken about the Gurkhas serving in the Indian army. They continue to do so. But have we overstepped in our big brotherliness?
I think it's both, if you really ask me. Let me take the first part of it on the aspect of the role of the media itself. Let me play for the Indian media. I think they're being condemned outright everywhere. This is not exactly a situation of comfort.
Yeah.
This is a very turbulent situation into which they've gone and they are working.
Yeah.
The last 9 days, I'm sure most of the people who are there on the ground have not had a glass of water or a decent meal to eat.
Yeah.
They're all doing their job. And most of them are stringers, actually. Many of them are stringers. And thrusting microphones here and there. I agree these are insensitive things happening.
Yeah.
But it's through these acts that the international community has got sensitized as to what exactly is happening in Nepal.
Yeah.
You found in the first 3 days, no one really moved anywhere around the world. It was all the Indian military, it was all the Indian relief organizations which moved in. Subsequently, the others also came in as a part of the overall sensitization effort which the Indian media had made. So I think the Indian media has played a great role. Well, they've gone overboard here and there. These are things which happen as a part of the job, and I think we should overlook that kind of a thing. But coming to the geopolitics part of it, if I may just say, there is a sensitivity involved in this. And you know, Nepal is not exactly the most, should I say, politically insensitive kind of a place.
So you don't agree with Ambassador Mukherjee that we're reading too much into the de-induction?
No, I would say,
yes.
Well, this is a time 9 days down. They are within their rights to ask for external teams to move. So far, we are in an information
Only
void.
the search and rescue teams.
We are in an information
asking
void.
for more teams from
the
us.
Army Chief, General Rana, has only said that he wants the rescue teams to move out.
And not
he
the
has
relief
not said
teams.
relief teams. There are uniformed people who are in the relief teams also. There are uniformed medical people, doctors, nurses who are there working in the field, welfare organizations. Whether they are being asked to leave also, we still don't know.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have to wait for that.
Okay, Nalini is an Indian who runs a TV channel in Nepal. Where is that balance in not treating another country as your own turf, but still being empathetic to what is in the end a human tragedy where borders don't matter, and where your military, your NDRF, your team, your diplomats are doing a fantastic job?
Yeah. First of all, they are doing a fantastic job. The second thing is that you're talking about our channel, Nepal 1. It has mostly Nepali reporters. So their sensitivity was different. I think that they told me that the Indian media is crossing the line to jingoism, and that in fact is becoming an extension of the government of India. They said, let us praise NDRF. Why is the Indian media doing it? Let the victims say that we have been saved. So, but here what is happening is, you are alive thanks to India. So they said that this is, they had told me, but you know, you were all in there. I would just like to say, but all of Indian media should certainly not be condemned. I think there were some doing a fantastic, but a restrained job. But the other thing is that it is not just this, is more complex, and Shiv will not agree here, but it's the projection of the so-called involvement of India in the politics, in the polity of Nepal for a long time. So this got projected to her. Now the Indian media is also here. Now they're saying that they are the ones who are carrying the flag of humanity, etc. So that's what
I'll get Shiv Mukherjee to come into that. But Vishnu, just a sense from being a reporter on the ground there, are you facing hostility?
Oh, yes and no, Barkha. Firstly, there is this Twitter world where people seem to suggest that people on the ground here in Nepal are completely angry with Indian reporters. Now, depending on where we are, we feel a great deal of affection from Nepalese people, a great deal of concern for our well-being in this country, because they also know that we aren't, eating normal meals and the like. On the other hand, there is this battle waging on Twitter and people who claim that Indian media have done terrible things. I should also mention that there has been an instance when we were heckled by a group last night when I was broadcasting live, and we were told, get out of Nepal. Now, I see that as a complete aberration, and I don't think that it represents the sentiment of people on the ground. That being said, as you mentioned in the beginning of this program, that there is this brush, and we are all sort of painted with the same brush because of the misreporting and the insensitivity of a bunch of Indian reporters. And I should also mention things like running exclusive, across a disaster zone coverage, first in a helicopter. I mean, are we racing with each other to get exclusive stories on human suffering? Are we not human beings ourselves? I mean, what are we doing over here? And in the process, the Twitter world
I think that's
is
a very
angry with
important
us.
point, and I think that's something the media does need to
I just want
introspect
to
on.
say that the Nepali mainstream media did not pick up this trend of Indian media go out. It was social media. So we don't even know if those IDs were fake or real. But it's Nepal.
But you did pick up on that sentiment.
But the
You are picking
MSM,
up.
the Nepali mainstream media, then reported that. But Barkha, do consider why we, who are Nepali language and who are Indian, why we were not heckled. Think about that.
Okay, I just want to get Sujeev and Shobha to come in here. Sujeev, what is the anger the most about? Is it that the media is being seen as an extension of the Indian state? Is it that the media has not always been sensitive? You see, the media also in a hurry will sometimes make a unintentional mistake. Unintentional mistakes, we've all made them. Which one of us has not looked back at an interview we've done and said, oh God, did I really speak with that shriller tone? I could have been better. That's a different thing. We all make mistakes. What is the anger on the ground about, Sujeev?
I think the key thing is, as Vishnu said, you can't just, sort of generalize everybody coming in from India. All Indian media is doing this. But yes, definitely some of them have got into this competition race to say that we are getting the stories before others. Also, Indian media needs to understand that there are international media and they're not national media. And this is not a national Indian event. So there is BBC, there's Al Jazeera, there's CNN, there's all the global media. So Indian media needed to be an international media here. And somewhere most of them saw this as an extension of what is happening in India.
That's
and the way the questioning was done,
it's a very
the use of language.
Yeah, I want Shobha Day to come in on that.
And I think that is a big maturity.
Yes, I get what you're saying, and I want
that is required.
Yes, sir. Shobha, very, very important point there, that we did not behave like we are international media. It's one thing when it's happening within your geographical boundaries and you're saying, wow, well done, our forge. It's another thing to go to another country and say, wow, well done, our forge. I think that's the point I'm hearing from Sujeev.
Yes, absolutely right, Barkha. We do behave atrociously sometimes with no sense of proportion whatsoever. And we've seen that over and over again. But we also need to understand that we behave equally badly on home turf as well during calamities. We go there like we are covering a film premiere. We go there with the same approach. It's a lack of professionalism and a lack of training. Sometimes we don't send the right people to cover the right events, and that can be very antagonistic to people on the ground who are suffering. And that antagonism that I'm talking about is subliminal, but it exists. Our whole big brotherly attitude, even as tourists when we go to Nepal, we are the rich neighbors coming there to splurge in a poor country. I've seen that over and over again. I've been going to Nepal for over 40 years now. And there is a growing resentment against the Indian who comes there and struts about. There is a kind of patronizing attitude. We are condescending towards locals. We don't understand the culture. We make sweeping comments about them, which they find very deeply offensive, and they are insulted, and they have a right to be.
I want to bring
and at a time like this, when there ought to be heightened sensitivity, we don't display it.
General Hasnain,
We just go in there like we're there to come. There's a scoop happening.
General Hasnain, you know, when I was reporting on the floods in Jammu and Kashmir, a number of Kashmiris were very angry with me as well. And they said that you have only spoken about the army, you have not spoken about the local volunteers. Once again, what people don't understand about media and reporting in calamity and conflict zones is sometimes you report the story that you first get access to. And sometimes it's natural to get access to your own military because they will facilitate that access, right? That doesn't mean you remain embedded reporters. You often have to go beyond. But my question is somewhat different. As journalists, what are we meant to do? If the military or our state is doing a great job, should we not tell that story? But I think Sujeev makes that really important point. Did we forget that in Nepal, we were international media?
I will disagree to an extent on that. You see, Al Jazeera, CNN and BBC are international media, fine. The Indian media in Nepal is also international media. But here you're forgetting that there is a special relationship between Nepal and India. Forget the political relationship. Forget everything else. There's a social relationship and there's an emotional relationship between India and Nepal. The Indian considers the Nepalese as his own.
But maybe the Nepalese doesn't like that.
Maybe a little overbearing. You can't forget the relationship between the Indian.
I think Sujeev is trying to say something. I think Sujeev is trying to say something, and then Ambassador Mukherjee. Yes, Sujeev.
I think that the key thing is that we need to understand that there were some issues relating to the relationship between India and Nepal. And with Prime Minister Mr. Modi's visit last year, there has been a lot of confidence building of India in Nepal. And I think events like this, we cannot brush it off as a, sort of cultural proximity, because I think sovereignty of Nepal has been a big issue. Nepalis have been using, and Ambassador Mukherjee would also said, there have been issues where politicians use anti-India sentiments to, sort of whip the public sentiment.
Let me get Ambassador to come in, and then last comment from all of you. Yeah, Ambassador, how do we read it? Can we brush it away? As Sujeev said, as भाई हम तो एक ही हैं, ये तो हमारा ही देश है, हमारा ही छोटा भाई है. All very well-meaning, but it's like going to Pakistan and saying, "Oh, I wish partition had not happened." It's an insult to their nationhood.
Well, let's look at it this way. If your viewers today are left with a feeling from everything that this panel has said, that there is a vast, all-pervasive anti-Indian feeling in Nepal,
no, we're not saying that. None of us
would be horribly wrong.
Yes,
it is not the reality. This anti-Indian business, something I've dealt with for years and years in the job and out of it, is very easily explained. There are lots of complex reasons. Let's take the two main ones. The rule of the Shahs and the Ranas was a total failure of governance that did nothing for the country. India was the big brother. Now, big brothers always are a target for the small brother anywhere in the world. So, India was a convenient scapegoat for their own misrule. And the easiest thing for them was to equate anti-Indianism with nationalism. And 250 years of brainwashing inevitably results in some kind of anti-Indian thing left behind in some sections of the population, not all. I agree with Shobha De about the second part of what she said, that Indians can be patronizing too. They can be, and they have been. And we get the repercussion. But I do not agree with her that Indian tourists are frowned upon and so on. Ms. De, the only nationality the Nepali hospitality worker looks forward to is the Indian tourist, because they are the only ones who spend money, which is their bread and butter. The Western backpacker, because he gets a free breakfast along with his tariff, stuffs his pockets with 12 slices of bread and goes out trekking.
So Shobha, quick response, and then I want to get a last word in from Vishnu and Nalini. Shobha, quick response.
Of course. I mean, they do value the Indian rupee. There's no question about that. But that does not mean they particularly like us. They need the money that India brings to tourism, and we love their casinos.
I don't know why we love to be liked.
A lot of Indians go across to mainly to gamble. But that's not the point. And that's not the point. It's whether they like our conduct. I don't think they do. I think there are times when we are extremely offensive and we are very insensitive to local sensibilities. and they make quotes the Indian rupee, but that's about it.
Nalini, is that your experience? Is it all about the Indian rupee?
No, not at all. I think it's about historical dominance, what they considered dominance, and it was not so. But the Ranas, how would the monarchs rule unless they say that that's the enemy? And the Ranas themselves would, any unspent budget of Nepal had to go into the private coffers of the Ranas. So they're coming from 238 years of that. But I would say that political disaster has exacerbated the natural disaster in Nepal. Nobody is going to contradict this. If in fact we had, Nepal had a stable government and a perfectly fine constitution that they could be working on, I think that
doesn't that make the anger with India where it exists, and we must be careful to stress that there are pockets of it, not necessarily a broad stroke. Doesn't it make it even more mystifying? Because if your own government is virtually collapsed and is non-existent.
Let me say, they collected, the Prime Minister's Disaster Relief Fund in Nepal has collected about $1 million or $1.5 million. Do you know how much they've distributed up to today? Is $15,000 at the rate of about $1,000 per family. That's 15 families, where here you and I know about 7,300 dead bodies have been found. That many families affected at least. So obviously there are, the Nepal government is in need, and I'm sure they will do a very competent job with Nepal. By the way, I must say, Nepal army is being praised everywhere in Nepal.
Vishnu, just 30 seconds, and then General Hussain, you can take the last word. 30 seconds, Vishnu, on your learnings there. We all learn from every story that we reported. We continue to. After 20 years, I still make mistakes, I still learn. I'm sure so do you.
Barkha, in situations like this, we've both spent decades covering conflict and natural disasters. I always tell myself one thing when I cover a scenario like this. When in doubt, don't ask a question. When in Delhi covering a political story or something else, when in doubt, you stick a mic and you ask a question to the person that you want to get an answer from. In situations like this, it's better to be restrained. It's better to err on the side of caution, because you as a reporter cannot comprehend even remotely the kind of emotional stress that people on the ground are in.
I think that's well said. General Hussain, quickly wrap this up for us.
My last bit on this: don't let a tragedy become a divider. Let a tragedy become a unifier. That is the most important thing, and I want to exemplify this by telling you there are many of us in the Indian Army, senior officers, who still haven't completed the job of getting in touch with all our Gurkha units who have served with us before. I'm still in the job doing it, trying to find out who has suffered, where he has suffered. Can I come in and join in bringing some relief to him? This is the kind of sensitivity we have to be involved in.
Well, much to learn, and this is not at all to take away from the fantastic job that's being done on the ground, but just to go a little deeper within ourselves to examine perhaps what we could do better. We leave it there. Sujeev Shakya, Vishnu Shom, Shobha De, Nalini Singh, Shiv Mukherjee, General Hussain. Pleasure as always to have you all on the buck stops here. That's it on the program tonight. See you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.